Alright, so I tried doing this through live stream multiple times, so apparently it's not gonna work if I do it through live stream. I don't know why. So my personal apologies to the multiple notifications some of you guys may have gotten. Um, I'm just gonna have to do this the old-fashioned way, and then you guys can watch later on. But given the fact that I've tried to do this multiple times, I'm just gonna basically summarize what I think about G-Man's take on the whole Matt Bell situation. Basically, what I was saying in the last 4 or 5 takes of the live stream was just um, there's two perspectives. There's man's perspective and there's God's perspective. And there was a lot of just stupid comments in his chat, talking about, well, what about the old ladies who have devoted their service to doing stuff that we would seem to be virtuous, like giving to the poor, um, you know, volunteering at homeless shelters, the whole nine. She just happened to be an atheist versus someone who was just an outright pedophile monster who would come to repentance in Christ and then they would go to heaven while the old lady who did virtuous service would go to hell. Well, my take on that is you're looking at it from the wrong perspective. You got to look at it from God's perspective, not man's perspective. Now, the whole thing about that situation is a lot of people tend to think on the surface that they're basically good people, and comparison to what things like Matt Bell have done, they're essentially solid. They're morally clean, or in comparison, they're a lot more morally pure than the Matt Bells of the world. Here's the problem. Even from my limited human perspective, I can see how that's obviously just not true. For instance, if you look at half of the people in the United States, so roughly half the people in the United States support abortion on demand. They have their perspective that the baby in the womb is not a person, or if they acknowledge as a person, it doesn't have rights. Or if they acknowledge that it has rights and it's human, if they acknowledge all the above, those things don't supersede the rights of the woman. And then they make all the little excuses for why the woman can go into an abortion clinic and have someone murder her child. So of course, in their subjective minds, they're going to think that they're better than someone like Matt Bell. But again, that's their own subjective perspective talking. That's not God's perspective, that's theirs. But they'll try to justify it in their own minds, thinking that they could just play this little comparison game with pointing the finger at what someone like Matt Bell does versus what they do, and say, oh, I'm essentially a better person. In God's eyes, you're absolutely not a better person whatsoever. Not even close. The bottom line is we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, every last single one of us. I mean, let's say you go into court, right? And you try to play some comparison game. Like even in man's court, this wouldn't work. For instance, if you were going to prison for, let's say, tax evasion, and then you try to compare your more, well, maybe not necessarily moral crime, but whatever. Let's just call it, you committed a crime under the law. Let's say your crime that you've committed under the law, you try to compare yourself to someone else, like, let's say, Jeffrey Dahmer. You say, well, my tax evasion is nothing in comparison to what someone like Jeffrey Dahmer did. So who are you to go talking to me about putting me in jail? You think that would fly in the law, in the face of the authorities that run our country and run pretty much any type of court on this planet? No. That would not fly in any court I mean, at least any court that was acting in any sound judgment at that point, that wouldn't fly. You comparing your level of criminality to someone else's would not get you out of your punishment. You still would go to prison. That doesn't work in the court of flawed man. What makes you believe that you try and compare yourself as a lesser sinning person or a lesser offensive person in regards to someone like Matt Bell? How do you think that's going to fly in front of God? Those excuses would not even be remotely tenable in front of flawed men. How do you think those excuses are going to fly in front of a perfect, unflawed, not unflawed God? If non-flawed is a word, if unflawed is a word. If it's not, then I stand corrected. But the point is, God is perfect. He has no flaws, no detriment, no defect whatsoever. You think you comparing the fact that you've committed tax evasion versus someone who raped versus someone who engaged in pedophilia is going to get you out your punishment? No. When you stand before God on Judgment Day, if you're unrepentant, facing God in a white throne judgment, no comparisons you give to anyone else is going to get you out of that, man. That's not going to fly. And G-Man was 100% correct. He was looking at this from God's perspective, from the Christian perspective. I don't know what some of you people expect, but he's a Christian. And if he's going to be consistently following his worldview, so of course he's going to look at it through that perspective. Now, I'm not saying you have to believe that perspective or you have to like that perspective, but I like to think you would at least appreciate that he's being consistent with his beliefs and evaluating the situation from that perspective. There's no question that what Matt Bell did was beyond deplorable, beyond horrendous, disgusting. You could throw any kind of pejorative towards that, and it would accurately reflect the nature of the sick things that he did. Okay? And he needs to serve his time to the fullest extent of the law. Whatever country he lives in, he needs to serve his time to the fullest extent. But as Christians, we do hope for the redemption of those who are lost, including those who have engaged in pedophilia, who have murdered, who have raped, who have stolen, anything. We hope for the repentance of those people, for the salvation of those people, that those people's souls will be saved, because he's correct. Whatever happens to people in hell is far worse than what Matt Bell is going to deal with. And in front of a perfect, righteous, holy, just God, there is no escape for anybody's sin. You won't be able to play this comparison game with another person. That's not going to get you out of God's judgment. You can try to appeal to God's grace and God's love and all that stuff, but that's you just picking and choosing attributes of God. You don't take God as a whole package and include the fact that he's just. He is not just loving. He is not just a God of grace. He is a God of righteousness and justice as well. G-Man is 210% correct when he says that people every single day spit in the face of God. They stomp and curse what Jesus did on the cross. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, so that those may not perish but may have everlasting life. And that message of hope, people spit in God's face and step on what he did all day. Jesus came to save us from the types of sins that Bell committed, from the types of sins that G-Man committed, from the types of sins that Antonio Fletcher has committed, from the types of sins that anyone you can think of, period, has committed. And I put this in the context of the sins that I've committed, G-Man and Matt Bell, and so on and so forth. Because we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. I don't say the type of sins that Matt Bell committed and just ended there. I say the sins that Matt Bell committed and Antonio Fletcher committed. But that's the awesomeness and the beauty of Christianity, is that it doesn't give you any license to stand on a moral pedestal and say that you're better than anyone else. A lot of you people who think that just because something isn't condemnable under man's law and in man's court, you think you can get a pass because it's not condemnable in man's court. It doesn't mean it's not condemnable in God's court. Sure, it's not condemnable in man's court to curse Jesus. It's not condemnable in man's court to blaspheme God. Sure, none of those are condemnable in man's court. But in God's court, it doesn't matter. Man's perspective versus God's perspective. This life is short. And you need to seriously think about what you've said on this earth when you stand before a righteous, just, holy God. It's not going to get you to any kind of escape. The time for repentance is this day, today. That's all I have to say. So before I ramble on too much further, I'm just going to end the video here and say that G-Man was 100% on point. And if you guys agree or disagree, let me know in the comments. That's all I got to say. Take care. God bless. Peace.